Crimson Desert, the next game from Pearl Abyss, has recently been showing off a lot of gameplay, especially at Gamescom, showcasing different boss fights and how the combat mechanics work. Let's go through some of the details we have recently learned about this game. Crimson Desert is an upcoming single-player open-world action-adventure game, developed by Pearl Abyss, the makers of Black Desert Online, a game known for its beautiful graphics, customization, and great combat system. So during Gamescom we got different boss fight gameplay videos, showcasing the various environments, enemy designs, and combat abilities that we can expect. Crimson Desert's combat is much more action focused compared to a typical RPG, and involves dodging, parrying, and countering to take down enemies effectively. Of course, there's going to be a mix of melee and ranged options. We see Cliff using various different weapons, including a sword and a bow and arrow, but we also see Cliff also work in various different moves, like clotheslines, drop kicks, and slams, similar to what you would see in wrestling, which is a nice unique addition that you don't normally see in games like this. And it does make Cliff seem more raw, more desperate, and just trying to use all his tools at his disposal. Looking more into the combat mechanics, we can also see Cliff slow down time when firing from his bow, along with a radial menu for quickly switching between weapons. A big thing to point out is that moves and combos in Crimson Desert are done based on button input, so think similar to Devil May Cry, where a certain sequence of buttons will do certain moves, like a certain button combination may send foes flying up into the air or kicking them back. So from the Gamescom previews, people have said there seems to be a lot of possible combinations and button inputs, so hopefully it's not too confusing in the thick of combat depending on which inputs are needed at any given time. Too many different combinations could be a bit hard to remember. Another interesting point is that combat has no lock-on camera, so this is an interesting choice as parries and counters are a big part of this gameplay, so maintaining the camera may be a bit more of a task when you're trying to do this at the same time. Some feedback during the Gamescom event was that sometimes the camera was a bit hard to control during fights, and that this may be a concern when the game actually releases, but I'm sure they can touch this up if they need to. And of course, these specific gameplay mechanics may change as we get closer to release based off the feedback that they have received. So looking more into the actual bosses themselves, from the Gamescom boss gameplay, we were shown 4 different boss battles. First off, we saw Whitehorn, a large beast enemy. The second one was Staglord, a humanoid type boss that was a bit bigger than Cliff but not giant compared to the Whitehorn boss. The third one was Red Devil. Now this boss seemed to have more of a puzzle element to it as you took down decoys in the middle of the fight. And the last boss was a Queen Stoneback Crab, and this was a giant boss that you could pretty much climb on top of and jump around on. Now each of these bosses showcased different locations, with each looking fantastic. These bosses we saw had great set pieces, with cutscenes woven throughout the fights, sort of jumping between a cutscene and the actual combat gameplay without sort of breaking immersion, which was very good to see. One such example is the Queen Stoneback Crab. You and your friend go on top of him, unknowingly thinking that he's a massive land or something like that, or fighting Whitehorn during a blizzard with massive amounts of large snow particle effects. And the environments just look stunning. They also seem to react throughout the battle, with various things breaking, barrels and crates will go smashing. During the Red Devil fight, there are also long reeds of grass, and they can be cut depending on how you slice your sword, which is also very cool, and how the environment will change depending on what moves you do. And also during the Staglord fight, there were various different weapons on the ground, and this had the option to pick these weapons up during the fight. Some of these bosses have multiple health bars with different phases. Previewers have said that some bosses definitely had a bit of difficulty to them, and the gameplay you're actually seeing is from a developer who definitely knows what they're doing and what moves to perform. So fighting these guys ourselves may be a different story, but I'm sure it won't vary too much. Another cool thing to note is during the Stoneback Crab fight, the player also gets shot into the air and begins gliding down, indicating that most likely players will be able to use that gliding mechanic outside of the boss fight, which is probably unlockable at some point during the story, but it also hints at players running into unique mechanics during certain boss fights. Now the developers have said that the amount of bosses in the full release will be anywhere from 20 to 40 bosses. That's a pretty wide range, but I'm very confident from what I've seen so far that they should be doing a good job with it. The developers have also given details on other points of the game when it comes to character progression and mechanics. So the first major point is that the devs have been labeling this an open world action adventure and not an RPG. A big example of this not going the usual RPG route is there is no character creation or customization. So each player is going to be controlling the same person. You're all going to be controlling Cliff for a more focused experience on his journey. And also from the previews, the character progression seemed to be more focused on finding equipment and learning moves after boss fights, or picking them up through the world via characters or just sort of interactions. From what we've heard and what people have seen so far, there is no typical level up system, but this isn't fully confirmed and could change at a later date. So don't expect any crazy skill trees or anything like that at this stage. Also, quest details weren't touched too much on during these videos, as it definitely was more of a focus on combat, but from dev comments, quest details and how they would work are still a bit under wraps. And since this is more of a action focus, quests may be more linear and not too varied in what the outcomes can be. And if you have been keeping track of Crimson Desert's development timeline, its genre and direction has changed quite a lot from its first reveal. So it was originally a MMORPG to an open world RPG, and now is being labelled an open world action game. So it definitely has had a bit of a shift, but with all the various gameplay being shown and it being open to previews now, I would say Crimson Desert is not too far away from getting more concrete info, like a release, and other videos explaining different things outside of its combat, with more info likely to come later this year, possibly at the Game Awards. But anyway, Crimson Desert is looking very good. I'll be keeping a close eye on this as well as we get more details on how the game looks, how it works, and outside of its combat. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more info on Crimson Desert as we hear it, and coverage of other games. Thanks guys, see you in the next one.